Hey there, fifth grade, Mr. Dorsey. Now you can see my face and hear my voice. This is writing for week 9. Week 9 already. 9 weeks since we've last been together. We miss you. We love you. Let's get into this. So let's start with last week's assignment. So last lesson, we were focusing on taking a big idea, funneling it into a smaller moment. And if you remember, my big idea was my sister graduating high school, and I was able to then funnel that down to an even smaller moment of her moving into her dorm room. So what's going on for this week? So we're going to be selecting a structure for our memoir. So authors, when they write, they use structure to put their memoirs together so it has form. What you're going to need is your writing piece from last week. So what are the memoir structures? There's 3 that we're going to focus on. So first you have your list-like or beads on a string. You have hybrid, and you have a narrative. And we're going to break down what each of those look like and the components of those moving forward. So a list-like structure, collection of small stories that link to one theme. So think of beads on a string. And I actually have my string right here. So the string represents the one theme. The beads, I have an orange, my camera's here. I have an orange sticker on here to represent a bead. So that bead represents one small story that connects to this entire theme. So here's an example of a list-like structure memoir. It's called When I Was Young in the Mountains by Cynthia Rylant. I'm going to read it to you. Feel free to pause the video if you need to reread. When I was young in the mountains, grandfather came home in the evening, covered with the black dust of a coal mine. Only his lips were clean, and he used them to kiss the top of my head. When I was young in the mountains, grandmother spread the table with hot cornbread, pinto beans, and fried okra. Later in the middle of the night, she walked through the grass with me to the Johnny house and held my hand in the dark. I promised never to eat more than 1 serving of okra again. When I was young in the mountains, we walked across the cow pasture and through the woods, carrying our towels. The swimming hole was dark and muddy, and we sometimes saw snakes, but we jumped away. On our way home, we stopped at Mr. Crawford's for a mound of white butter. Mr. Crawford and Mrs. Crawford looked alike and always smelled of sweet milk. When I was young in the mountains, we pumped pails of water from the well at the bottom of the hill and heated the water to fill round tin tubs for our baths. Afterward, we stood in front of the old black stove, shivering and giggling while grandmother heated cocoa on top. When I was young in the mountains, we went to church in the schoolhouse on Sundays and sometimes walked with the congregation through the cow pasture to the dark swimming hole for baptisms. So again, this is the list-like structure or the bead on the string. So again, here's our string. Let's break down When I Was Young in the Mountains. So I have 1 orange sticker on there for her first story, when she talks about, in the first paragraph, her grandfather coming home in the evening covered with the black dust of coal. Then there's a second story I noticed. She talks about her grandmother spreading the table with hot cornbread, pinto beans, fried okra. So I'm going to add another bead or sticker to our string. Then she talks about when I was young in the mountains, we walked across the cow pasture, through the woods, carrying the towels to the swimming hole. Another small moment of one common theme. That string represents when she was younger, and she's telling us all these stories that come with that. And then lastly, she talks about when they pumped pails of water from the well for their baths. So in that alone, we have 4 small stories, 1, 2, 3, 4, with a common theme, our string, of her being young in the mountains. So now we're into our second structure, the hybrid structure. So it first starts with ideas and reflections in a paragraph or two, and then you move on to a narrative story. So again, I'm going to read this to you, but please pause as needed. What they don't understand about birthdays and what they never tell you is that when you're 11, you're also 10 and 9 and 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And when you wake up on your 11th birthday, you expect to feel 11, but you don't. You open your eyes and everything's just like yesterday, only it's today. You don't feel 11 at all. You feel like you're still 10. And you are, underneath the year that makes you 11. Like some days, you might say something stupid, and that's the part of still being 10. Or maybe some days you might need to sit on mom's lap because you're scared, and that's the part of being 5. And maybe one day when you're all grown up, you will need to cry like if you're 3, and that's okay. That's what I tell Mama when she's sad and needs to cry. Maybe she's feeling 3. Because the way you grow old is kind of like an onion, or like the rings inside a tree trunk, or like my little wooden dolls that fit one inside the other, each year inside the next one. That's how being 11 years old is. So we can see in this excerpt by Sandra Cisneros, she's really not telling us a story at this point. She's telling us her feelings and her thoughts of what it's like to be 11. So that's the first part of the hybrid structure. So this is another excerpt from the same memoir, 11 by Sandra Cisneros. And again, I'm going to read it. Pause if need be. Rachel, Mrs. Price says. She says it like she's getting mad. You put that sweater on right now. No more nonsense. But it's not now, Mrs. Price says. This is when I wish I wasn't 11, because all the years inside of me, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, are pushing at the back of my eyes when I put one arm through one sleeve of the sweater that smells like cottage cheese, and then the other arm through the other, and stand there with my arms apart like if the sweater hurts me, and it does. All itchy and full of germs that aren't even mine. That's when everything I've been holding in since this morning, since when Mrs. Price put the sweater on my desk, finally lets go, and all of a sudden I'm crying in front of everybody. I wish I was invisible, but I'm not. I'm 11, and it's my birthday today, and I'm crying like I'm 3 in front of everybody. I put my head down on the desk and bury my face in my stupid clown sweater arms, my face all hot and spit coming out of my mouth because I can't stop the little animal noises from coming out of me until there aren't any more tears left in my eyes. And it's just my body shaking like when you have the hiccups, and my whole head hurts like when you drink milk too fast. So let's think about the previous slide. She's telling us her feelings, her thoughts of expressing emotions during a certain age. And now in paragraphs 14 through 18, she's telling us a story, a narrative of how those emotions, the 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, came into play. She says they're all pushing at the back of her eyes. She's crying like she's 3, but she's really 11. So it's that mix of expressing a feeling and then combining that feeling with a story. That is how you create a hybrid. So our third structure is the narrative structure. So this structure is very essay-like. You begin with an opening statement about yourself, and you follow by supporting that statement with examples and reasoning, much like you would when writing an essay. So here's quietly struggling. Some of the past lessons has had this as a link to read, so you might have read this already, but if not, I'm going to read it to you, and again, pause if need be. I've always struggled with putting myself out in the world. When I was little, my mom would go to parent-teacher conferences, and every year she would come home with the same comment from my teachers. Kelly is very quiet. My mom would ask me if I could make a goal to speak up once a day in class, and would try, but I didn't always succeed. Even today, there are times that I am not outgoing. It is hard for me to be outgoing for many reasons. It can be hard for me to be outgoing because observing helps me to feel more comfortable. I need time to organize my ideas before speaking or acting, and I don't want to look foolish. So let's break this down. Essay like starting off with a statement about yourself. Her very first sentence: I've always struggled with putting myself out in the world. And as we keep reading, she gets to those reasons, those 3 reasons, which comes at the end. It can be hard for me to be outgoing because observing helps me feel more comfortable. I need to organize my ideas. I don't want to look foolish. The first reason why it can be hard for me to be outgoing is because observing helps me feel more comfortable. In middle school, when I went to dances, I stood back before going out on the dance floor. Other kids just dove right onto the middle of the floor and started moving to the music, but I couldn't do that. Even if I'm on vacation, I like to take some time to watch before I jump in and start doing things, like the time I went on a cruise. The minute I got on board, I was surrounded by people. There were people asking questions and carrying suitcases and blocking hallways and crowding into the elevators. I stood back and found a seat by a window and gave myself time to watch. It was hard for me to be outgoing and just jump into the middle of things. Observing makes me feel more comfortable. So right there, she breaks down reason number 1. Observing helps her feel more comfortable. And she gives us 2 examples of that. One being the middle school example of dancing, kind of sitting back and watching before acting. And again with the cruise, sitting back and watching before acting. Another reason why it can be hard for me to be outgoing is because I like to have time to organize my ideas before speaking up or acting. When someone asks me, "What do you think?" it can be hard for me to answer right away. How should I start? What should I say first? Sometimes there are so many ideas buzzing in my head that I'm not sure which one to follow. Like the time I was in 5th grade and my class went to the field trip to DC. My friends were arguing about what to do first. "We have to go to the Smithsonian," my friend Jenny said. So there again, she gets into the second reason. She even starts that paragraph. Another reason why it can be hard for me to be outgoing is because, and she lists the reason. She needs to organize her ideas before speaking or acting. And then she talks about how she needs to do that and brings up the Washington, D.C. field trip example. So this is my example from last week. It was about my sister and that final moment of me moving her into her dorm and the thoughts I went through. And please take a moment to just reread this. So now after rereading, I'm going to ask myself, did I notice any structure? And I'm thinking of the 3 structures again, the list-like, the hybrid, the narrative. And what you had just read does not fit into any of those. So no, I don't have any structure. Now I'm going to ask myself, what structure is the best fit for what I'm trying to say? And there's not really one big theme and small moments about the dorm room. So I'm not going to use the list like. And I'm going to think about the narrative. And I'm not really talking about myself or one person. And there's not really reasons or support to back up that memoir. So that leaves me with my last option, the hybrid. And I think that's going to fit best because I'm going to be able to reflect on my feelings about my sister and who she is to me. And then I'm going to be able to tell you a story or a narrative. So the hybrid's going to work best here because I'm going to be able to do both for what I'm trying to say to my reader. Now I'm going to think what needs to be added. And again, it needs to be those reflections and those thoughts. So here's my redrafted memoir using the hybrid structure. Most sisters have an overprotective big brother. That's me. Cassandra has always been a mini version of me, but at the same time, her own independent and strong young lady. I respect and appreciate those qualities about her, but still feel I have a big brother duty to uphold. Growing up, I did my best to make sure she stayed out of trouble and was choosing good friends and boys. I was always available when she needed me. We fought like siblings do over the television or who got the shower first. After high school, she became more independent. My big brother duties were starting to lessen day by day. My sister was preparing to go off into the world without her big brother. She seemed unbothered by going on without me, but it bothered me. Will my sister be all right without her big brother? And right there, I'm giving you guys that reflection, those thoughts of growing up as a big brother to my little sister, Cassandra. So that's that first part of the hybrid. And here's the redraft continued. The hallways in my sister's dorm was crowded with boxes and people. The elevator was always cramped and smelled funky. I remember grabbing that last box and seeing an empty trunk. That was the last of my sister's belongings. My father and I helped Cassandra get situated, and eventually it became awkward. Anything else you need? I asked. She reassured me that she was going to be okay. How? I thought to myself. I'd been watching over her all these years, but then it hit me that she needs to spread her wings. I gave her one last hug and told her I loved her. A small tear dripped down my face. She replied with, I love you, Kev. I love you too, Kev. Thanks for being my big brother. At that moment, I knew she was going to be fine. I walked out of her dorm room with confidence that if she needed me, I would be there. It was her time to go into the world without me. And there comes the story, the narrative, based on the reflection. So again, me being that big brother to my little sister, and then this narrative, that moment that kind of redefines and expresses those thoughts and feelings. So our task for this week. First off, you need to reread your memoir. Secondly, you're going to identify a possible structure that you can use to better shape your memoir. And that all comes with the rereading part. What am I really trying to say to my reader? Please reread the models in this video for support if you need them. And then after that, you're going to redraft or add more content to your memoir based on the selected structure. And just a reminder that if you need the full model examples, I will be posting them on It's Learning. I only used excerpts in this video, but so I will post the full thing if you want to view that. I can't wait for you guys to really dig and dive into your memoirs. I know there's some great stories out there, and I cannot wait to read them. And I know your teachers cannot wait to read them as well. Please do not hesitate to reach out to your homeroom teacher if you need support in this writing process. You guys have fun. Have a great day.